We get it. All you want to do is treat patients. But the thing is, you're also the owner of the practice. And because of that, you must also lead it and even manage it. If you don't, then it's going to manage itself. And usually those practices kind of fall off the rails eventually. My guest today is often called in to get practices like that back on the rails. And he's going to make the case that you cannot abdicate management in this episode of Practice Care. I'm Carl White, principal at Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Usually that's what they want anyway, but care is better when the provider or providers own the practice because they get to make all the decisions, clinical, business, and otherwise, and make sure that what's going on is best for patients throughout. It's just not quite always the same when there's other owners, private equity, owners in faraway lands, whoever they may be, systems, hospital systems, whatever, because their agenda starts to creep in. It's not always the same, more for the provider to think about. Let's just keep it simple and keep it private. My guest today is Daniel Tribby. Daniel is a healthcare provider, effective business growth strategist, award-winning author, top keynote speaker with a vision to help healthcare entrepreneurs build a practice that serves its patients and sustains profitability for the long term. Daniel, thanks for coming back to Practice Care.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again, Carl. Man, these are a lot of fun. Looking
They
forward to.
are. It's just it's fun to kind of shoot the you know what about the business side of private practice. There's a lot to
Yeah,
talk about.
I love the idea of keeping private practice private too. There's too much of that going the opposite direction these days. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
mission is
Me too.
beautiful.
It's a fun cause. So we're going to get into you can't abdicate management no matter how much you might want to. It's hard. Management is hard, but it's necessary. Um, but first, regular listeners know I'm going to ask you to tell us more about yourself. Your bio was unusually brief. So take some time and fill us in. Include the guitars behind you. I want to know what's going on there.
Yeah. So I this was actually I have nowhere else in my house to put them, so let me hang them back here. They're kind of like lapel
You need a
pins,
better
right?
story. You need a better
Right.
story while
Yeah.
they're
So no,
there.
I've been involved in music some way, shape, form since I was a kid, and so I picked up guitars, and this one right here is a ukulele. I
Ah.
picked that up in college 20x years ago, and so I kind of play for fun, but
Mhm.
there's no bands in my past, present, or future. It's just something fun to mess around with at the house. So
Sure.
yeah, so from a background perspective, I my whole career has been in healthcare, both as a provider and a business strategist. Um, while I loved treating, I didn't love the quantity over quality presentation that I know so many of you as consumers in healthcare feel, but
Hmm.
then also as providers, it seems like there's this never ending wheel, if you will, of patients coming to your practice for help, and you were probably feeling overwhelmed and
Hmm.
also feeling like your insurance companies are not reimbursing you effectively enough for the
Hmm.
job that you do. So I feel for that, which is what drove me away from being part of the treatment side and part of the business side. Like how do we grow great businesses.
Hmm.
And I had the opportunity to be part of a really great cash paid business that was centered around regenerative medicine for orthopedics. So
Okay.
we grew that practice into seven figures fairly quickly. After 6 years of owning it, we took an exit. That was in 2023. So I just solely been consulting and helping people in the private practice world really hone in on their business skills. Work with better leadership, better management,
Hmm.
better branding, better marketing.
Hmm.
Well, you're the marketing guy. I don't
No, I don't
do
have a lock on
marketing.
anything, but yes. No, no, but
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
I don't do like actually physically do marketing. I will
Hmm.
teach the messaging part of it, help people hone in on that,
Right.
and then I on others much smarter than me to do the marketing side. But sales, those kinds of things. So anything that would be centered around practice growth and development, I
Mhm.
love to do.
Okay, great. That definitely helps. So you can't abdicate management. That's the title of this episode. Let's just start with kind of a basic definition. Abdication, abdicate. What does that mean? Let's make sure we're all hearing it the same way.
If you Webster's dictionary version would just be, relinquishing responsibility for something.
Hmm.
I think might even be an old English kings and queen type of term
Oh,
where
maybe.
the new royalty comes in and they abdicate their space for everyone else. But I think in terms of what we're talking about is if you are in a startup and
Hmm.
you've grown this business and you've done all of the things, you're wearing all of the hats,
Hmm.
to a point where you got a little cash in your pocket and you say, I want to hire somebody to come do this role.
Hmm.
You abdicate them to that role, which
Hmm.
means you take everything that you were doing and you give it to them without direction. And then you let them go. And that
Hmm.
potentially causes problems for you on
Yeah.
down.
Right. So you're out of it. You try to sort of wash your hands of it, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's usually the thing that you don't like,
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's the
it's
advice. Take what you're not good at and find somebody else who's better at it. Right. I mean, that's, yeah,
right, which is great advice,
it's
but
incomplete.
right, but the other half of that is teach them how to apply it to your system, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. And we're going to come back to the words like systems in a little bit. But
Yeah.
you're out there consulting, you've got more visibility than I do on this, but it's clear that it's I guess more likely to see abdication than not. And I'm wondering why. Why do you see it so? What do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is relative to as healthcare providers, we spend so much time in school learning how to treat people, and that's the
Hmm.
main thing that we know how to do.
Hmm.
So when we get into a business, we structure a business as an entrepreneur around doing that thing.
Hmm.
But the tax and strategies around making a business work around
Hmm.
that skill set are very different than actually providing the skill set. There are a
Yeah.
ton of really good providers out there that just don't know how to run a business around their skill.
Hmm.
And so what they very quickly do is they don't establish the foundations of what it takes to build a business.
Hmm.
They hire people that they think can do things to help them, but they don't give them guidelines as to
Yeah.
how they want that done. So foundationally, when you start a business, you have to use certain pull tactics, pull like Pull, not
Hmm.
pull, dive in, but pull.
Yeah.
And so those things are like a compelling vision statement or mission statement,
Hmm.
core values, things that would draw people to want to work with you and
Hmm.
keep engaged in a common goal or a common direction.
Yeah.
And so as a foundation, if you're not creating those things, then you have no way to then put operations together,
Hmm.
right? So my core values and mission statement for a cash paying practice that works with high net worth individuals,
Hmm.
it's much different than if I open a practice who predominantly works with Medicare and Medicaid individuals,
Right.
right? And the operations for those are very different.
Hmm.
I'm building a practice. I have to be very, very crispy, as my friend Seth Turnoff says. I have to be very crispy in my
Yeah.
message so that I not just attract the patients, but I attract the people who can deliver the service. And
Hmm.
I have to teach them
Hmm.
how they take their unique skill set and
Hmm.
apply it to our system, to our vision,
Yeah.
right? If I were to hire, like, say, Carl, I want you to come in and do our marketing, but I give
Hmm.
you no direction, you're
Hmm.
just going to do what you know how to do, which is
Hmm.
great. We
Hmm.
love that. But then when you do it and it's not part of the way that I would imagined it done, but I gave you no guidelines and I get mad at you, it's actually my fault. It's not yours.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's the thing that you run into. And then these people start saying things like, oh, well, we tried that and it didn't work. Oh, I hired
Yeah.
to do that and they did it wrong. Well,
Yeah.
did they? Or did you just not show them how? And then we get this feeling that we have to do everything. If
Yeah.
you're a business owner, have you ever thought to yourself, no one can do it right? Or if it's going to get done right, I have to do it. It's
Yeah.
probably because you fell into this trap of not executing the foundational messaging,
Yeah.
hiring people, and then delegating based upon that message, not abdicating based upon skill set.
It's funny you say that because every once in a while I'll hear just in the marketing world, we tried that didn't work. And my brain goes to asking them, well, how'd you do it? What'd you do
Right.
and how'd you do it? And inevitably, usually it's, oh, okay, well, we're going to do it differently than that. So yes, but you're right. You're totally right. So, for listeners out there who are well, for listeners out there, the next question is about kind of like early signs, telltale signs that an owner um, might be doing this. Like, what are some early kind of problem signs or things where you can look at it and go, or maybe you could definitely go, well, I know that's what's happening, but they don't yet. So, what would you say?
Usually you'll start to see people kind of pushing back on you if they
Mm,
feel like they've done a great job and you're like, why did you do it like that? And that's
Hmm.
usually the first question. Why are they doing it like that?
Hmm.
Did I may have told them what I want them to do, but did I give them the background reasons or the why behind what I want? I know everybody talks about why all the time and why you start the business and
Hmm.
why being in oncology or orthopedics is important to you and really diving into that. And they're not wrong. You have
Hmm.
to know why you're structuring your business a certain way.
Hmm.
And if we're not aligning operations with that, like we
Hmm.
talked about a few minutes ago, then you start to just ask questions internally.
Hmm.
And they sound a lot like, well, they're professionals. They should know to do it this way, not that way. But they
Right.
don't. You don't want somebody bringing a skill set that they learned at ABC orthopedics into your XYZ orthopedics because they might be
Right.
two very different animals.
Right.
So if you're starting to feel like my staff, or why is this person doing something a certain way,
Yeah.
probably because you haven't actually had a real conversation about why you want things done a certain way.
Right.
So
Right.
at least,
And
go
yeah,
ahead.
and like, the when you're treating patients, that's the delivery portion of your practice. But there's
Mhm.
more kind of departments. I'll use air quotes, departments, right? That's fulfillment. That's a generic term. And nobody wants to be reduced to that. I fulfill marketing services, and if my services are fulfillment's bad, nothing else is going to matter. But it's not the only thing. If you deliver your coaching services and they're bad, however, well, eventually the rest of the practice will crash to the ground. However, the other kind of departments, sales, customer service, finance, all these things, they also matter and they have to be running well also. And you have to give some, you're right, you have to give some care and feeding to how you want to see those things done. Before we started recording, you were talking about two types of abdication. One is, and I'm curious about, because I think this is, I didn't get it when you first said it, and then I got it. But there's abdication saying, "Here, new employee, off you go, and I'll see you in 6 months." That's complete. But then the other one you said is abdication by micromanagement, which is a bit counterintuitive when you first hear it. So talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. So we relinquish responsibility, but yet we still want to be the person who helicopters, right?
Mm.
Like, hey, what are you doing? So you gave up responsibility, but you're still kind of here talking, you
Hmm.
know? And so if you hire somebody with a particular skill set,
Hmm.
and you have aligned them with the proper messaging, vision, and mission, and
Hmm.
the way, right?
Hmm.
So, like our practice was called uh, Regenerative Sports Spine and Spa. So we had the Regen Way, is what we called it, and that
Okay.
was our SOPs, and that was our mission, our vision, our core values. So, and we hired people that aligned with that. So if
Hmm.
I've hired them and they align with it, and I say, great, take your skill set. Here's some guidance. Here's your SOP manuals about how
Hmm.
everything flow together, and you let them go do their thing, and you don't give them a chance to prove to you that they can align and do their thing because you're just constantly in their ear,
Hmm.
right? You've relinquished responsibility, but you're not leaving them alone so that they
Yeah.
can be successful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Delegate, manage them, help them, but
Hmm.
get their way also.
Hmm. Coach them to what good looks like and let them go do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, because you can see, I just don't want anybody to sort of knee jerk in the other direction and say, oh, then I got to watch everything they do. No, no, it's the sweet spot in the middle. So, what do you see in your experience with, practitioners who make good leaders, good managers versus those who do not? Because we've had a number of episodes and it just keeps coming back to what really makes greatness for a practice. Yes, you have to be amazing at care. Of course you do. But what makes it the separator after that is those who have the mission and the vision and the coaching and they've got the business skills, right? So what do you see in terms of good leadership versus not in this
Yeah,
context?
sure. I think everyone has their own leadership style, right?
Mhm.
So, and you have to be very aware of what your leadership style is. And for any one of you who've ever worked for someone who had to bang the gavel and who was constantly yelling and screaming, that's not leadership,
Mhm.
nor is it a leadership style. That's
Mhm.
just someone who's a jerk. All right. So,
It's a crappy style.
right. There are some people who have leadership styles that look and sound like bring me your problems. And there are some people who have leadership styles that look and sound like bring me your solutions.
Mhm.
And so you have to understand what kind of leader you are so you can cultivate that
Mhm.
and then be able to adequately explain it to your team.
Mhm.
this is my leadership style. These are my expectations. This is how I can best help you. If you guys
Mm-hmm.
have these issues, bring them to me in this form,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's it's a communication base,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nobody is going to just step in and go, I'm here, I'm a leader,
Mm-hmm.
without telling you specifically
Good
how
for
it is.
you.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, like, who is it that is going to follow you?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a great leader,
Mm-hmm.
you know how to hire people
Mm-hmm.
who identify and will follow your style of leadership,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we get into the idea of creating a vision, mission, core values, what our business stands for, those foundational concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Premise of why I exist, then I also in that have to decide my leadership style, or I have to know my leadership style, cultivate it further. And
Yeah.
as I hire my team out, I want to make sure that they align with those things, both my style and what our business stands for. And if
Yeah.
they don't hire them. Right,
Yeah.
you and I were talking about the we like to empower people to be entrepreneurs part,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
What are you talking? Like, tell me that scenario again, so we can clean that one up for everybody.
That was act like an owner of the company. You should act like an owner. Really? I don't see what you see. I'm not an owner. I can own my role, but why don't you show me everything you see, and then maybe I can act like an owner, even if I even wanted that, right? You know, if I'm even wired that way. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
like, when you do that, you can't. That's like telling me to think like a sprinter.
Right.
Like, I was a baseball player and a basketball player. I was not. I didn't run track. I didn't do any of that. So you
Yeah.
tell me to think like a sprinter. I have no idea what it takes to be a sprinter.
Yeah.
I can tell you all day what it takes to be a third baseman, right?
Hmm.
And to in the four spot. I can tell you that all day.
Right.
But I can't tell you what it means to run a 100-meter dash in 10 seconds. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're saying we want to empower people with an entrepreneurial spirit in their position, but they've never owned a business, they're not going to understand what you mean.
Hmm.
So if you are looking for entrepreneurial spirited people, then
Hmm.
you probably want to hire people who have had experience being an entrepreneur, not hiring, John or Sally who've only worked for X amount of dollars per hour and tell them
Yeah.
we're going to turn your entrepreneurial spirit on. If they don't want that, they don't care.
Yeah, I don't care
Right.
about
So,
that. Right. It's yeah, I mean, you're going to do what? That's like, I said I'm left-handed day one. We want you to be right-handed.
yeah,
Really?
huh?
Couldn't say that in the interview, huh? I mean, could have saved a lot of time. And then, the other part of it is you've got to act it. I mean, this is the thing. It's like even the people who whatever, they're all watching you. They all
Mhm.
watch what the leader does. And I had a different guest on who said, I view it like I'm an actor in a play, and every day the play is our practice. And I know I have to be now. A lot of how I act is how I am because he aligned things as we're talking about very, very well. But he had to make some changes because he knew that's for him. That's what greatness required. And he's like, I'm an actor in a play, and I have to be 100% consistent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and I tell them in his place, he's like, look, they call me out on it as I want them to, but he had to tell them that 15 times because nobody. So you set up the environment
Yeah.
just like what you were saying.
And the best leaders that I've ever had the privilege to follow, um, and because that's one of the key things, right? If you're going to be a leader, you got to have followers, right? If
Hmm.
nobody's following you, you're not a leader. You're just
Hmm.
saying. Right? So, is your ability to be human, right?
Hmm.
It's your ability to admit when you did something wrong.
Hmm.
It's your ability to admit what you're not good at.
Hmm.
Hey, I hired you because I'm horrible at organization. I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you that right now. I'm terrible. If you want me to keep a schedule, I'm awful at it. I need you to do that because
Hmm.
you're the king or queen of that, right?
Hmm.
And so knowing self-awareness, I guess, is pretty much the top line of leadership.
Yeah.
What how do I know myself so well that I can say, I apologize for getting that wrong and do
Hmm.
it openly.
Hmm.
Okay. I can inspire people to use their gifts in a way that benefits themselves, their team, and the business,
Yeah.
and they become their own little mini leaders themselves inside of their quote unquote departments,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So whether you are have the title or not, anybody can be a leader,
Yeah.
right? Be the
Yeah.
person. inspires. It's going to be the person that connects people to people. It will be the person that everyone, when you're all in a big meeting, the person that talks and everybody stops and looks at them, that's the leader in the
There's
room,
your leader.
regardless of
Yeah.
the type. That's
Yeah.
the leader in the room.
Yeah. So then is abdication then um, not giving the guidance to, I guess, however it is fits or how you want it? Is that it's not because you could look at abdication and say, oh, I just walk away and never talk to him. We corrected that with the micromanagement variation. But it sounds like abdication is not providing like the context, the vision, the mission, the appropriate amount of guidance.
Right.
Is that pretty much what it is then?
Very much so. It's not providing the guidelines to work in. It's not providing the proper field of play for the skill set, right? Like I mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
you can't take me as a prior baseball, basketball player and turn me into a sprinter. I don't
Right.
understand the world. You
Right.
know, if you were to hand somebody a basketball and put them on a baseball field, they're going to go, what?
Yeah.
So you have to set up, like you said, the context and the field of play and the rules and how you delegate things. And
Yeah.
like we talk about culture for a second, right? So
Sure.
there's three types of culture, right? There's the excuse me. Sorry about that. There's a culture that's the unspoken, unwritten culture, right? How do
Mm-hmm.
we get along? How do people like each other? It's a great business to work for. Why, right? There's the unwritten culture.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the written culture, which is the how do we do things around here? What is
Mm-hmm.
the operations? If I have a problem, who do I go talk to first?
Mm-hmm.
What's the language that I need to be familiar with using in here? Like
Mm-hmm.
that is part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we advocate, we don't teach that. We haven't taught people the two parts of the culture. We
Right.
just hired them and said, "Do your job, homie. Good
Yep.
luck."
Yeah.
Right.
Hope you get it right.
So, right. And if you don't, and they get their butts chewed out, they're like, "That's horrible leadership, and I don't want to work here anymore."
Yeah. And they may never even say it that way, but they're going to say things, but you never told me that, you
Right.
know? And if the finger gets pointed back at you, well, you should have just known it. Well, you know what? You know,
Yeah.
yeah. I was in one of the corporate stints I had. I remember this, that the CEO was particular big debate about how micro or whatever, but we were in this big planning exercise and we came back and I kind of had it. And I said to this friend of mine who was pretty influential, I said, every once in a while you see an interview with married couples for 50 years and they're asked, 50 years, 60 years, whatever, what's the secret to this marriage? You know what? None of them say great mind reading. You know what they all say? Great communication.
Right.
Like, and that's 50, 60 years. Like, how am I supposed to read the mind of, can we just, and that was not taken well,
Yeah.
but like, really, like, it's plain as day. So, yeah,
It's never unmet expectations. It's uncommunicated unmet expectations.
there you go.
If I told you this is what I am expecting, and this is why I'm expecting it to be this way,
Hmm.
and this is why it's so important to have you bringing your skill set
Hmm.
into the way we do this thing,
Hmm.
that's a communicated expectation,
Yeah.
right? So hey, we're glad you're here. We know that you're a CFO, which means you know finances. Go do your thing.
Save us. Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then they do it not the way that you would expect them to do it.
Yeah.
And then you have the gall, the audacity to stay in the room and say, well, you should have just known. Oh, you're outside of your mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Right.
Yeah. We can
No.
tell you how that turns out. Yeah. Yeah. Man, we have covered a lot of ground in a bite-sized amount of time here on Practice Care. A couple of questions kind of bring us to the finish line. Anything we should have talked about or touched on, or I should have asked you that we just didn't.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that kind of sums it up. We hit the values portion of it from a
Hmm.
concrete foundational, and then being able to explain it
Hmm.
culturally, both this is how we do things and this is the unwritten culture of it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
pretty well on what it
Yeah.
means to avoid the abdication side and really get down to the nitty gritties of how to build your business appropriately from the beginning.
Yeah. I think for me, the big eye opener was because I just never thought about it. Abdication, you think of just, hand it over and walk away forever, but the opposite can be true too. It's sort of uh, it's the good guidance, the positive coaching, enough to get kind of shove people in the direction you want them to go. Um, let's imagine the other question is, how can somebody get started on this if they just, if they're they're wondering about, are we doing this, or we want to do this better, whatever it might be, because it's not a quick thing. It might be quick to see, but it's not quick to fix. So what's something to
Yeah.
get them off the starting line and get moving?
I would say the best question to ask yourself is, do I have a compelling premise for my business? Right? Have I decided what the purpose of the business is, the vision of the business is, and the strategy behind it? Right.
Hmm.
So basically, we're talking about mission, vision, core values, and then the operations that align with that.
Right.
Well, is all of that compelling?
Hmm.
And if it's not, or you don't have it, or you haven't even considered it, then you have to start there. That is, unfortunately, that's not work that, yields dollars and cents right when you do it, right? We live in a gratification type of world. Like, I want to get
Hmm.
my doors open. I want to do some marketing, get some patients in, schedule them, treat them, make some money.
Hmm.
I get it. And also, you will acquire patients and staff that you don't want.
Hmm.
So we have to be very, very mindful of doing the necessary, concrete, foundational, compelling business premise
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
right. Then you'll find that everything else you do is those are goalposts for your building or for your
Yeah.
building practice, right? Those
Yeah.
are goal.
Right.
They're guiding lines for everything that you do. So if you establish that compelling premise,
Hmm.
you're gonna have a hard time going sideways as long as you stay within those guidelines you've created for yourself.
And yeah, and the compelling premise could be anything, as like I said, because it's legal and ethical. We just, what, we just want to make the most money we can. And you could go in a different direction and say, we want to heal the world in our area, whatever it might be. You don't have to apologize for any of it. You just be crispy, as you said. You have to be clear about it.
And
Yeah.
then do everything that aligns with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you hire that CFO that, is just mindful of all costs, whatever it is. But you're right. You're totally right. Um, I love this. This is great. I think I said earlier, we've had more and more episodes where we talk about these topics, and it keeps coming back to mission, vision, leadership.
Right.
That's what people need it. You need it. Your people need it. Your patients need it. And the clearer you are on that, just the more satisfying I think everything is going to be. Doesn't make it easy, but it certainly makes it worthwhile. So thank you for being an echo of what is becoming a similar message over this series of episodes here on Practice Care. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hopefully people are hearing it and heeding to it.
Yes, absolutely. So you provided contact information, which we're going to get into the show notes for your episode. So anybody who was intrigued by this and intrigued by you, they now have another way to find you. And a couple of points before we wrap up. First, please subscribe to Practice Care. Practice Care is one word. We're very easy to find. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, every player, YouTube. You can watch us talking just like we're recording here. See the guitars and ukulele that Daniel mentioned if you would like to. But we're very easy to find, and we do a new episode every week. And the easiest way to stay up to date with those is to subscribe. And finally, if you're someone like Daniel or us, and you've got experience on the business side of private practice, if you're a private practice owner yourself and you think you've got some experience, I'm sure you do, that you want to share with your peers either way, we want you to come on Practice Care, and we will get you interviewed and get the word out. In the show notes for Daniel's episode and every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks. It's fast. Tell us what's on your mind. We'll get it, and we'll get you scheduled as soon as possible. Thanks very much, and until next time.